Welcome to Powerless to Powerful with Angela Bennett, a show that brings a sassy mix of transformative advice on health, relationships, love, career, and mindset shifting, together with some fun and laughter. Powerless to Powerful with Angela Bennett begins now. Thank you for joining us again today on Powerless to Powerful. I'm so excited about my guest that's here with me today, Dr. Lamarr Spencer. She is a seasoned life alignment coach and inspiring public speaker. She empowers overwhelmed business owners to transition from burnout to embracing and enjoying life's important moments. Her personalized solutions effectively tackle operational challenges and support this transformation. As a prolific author, Dr. Spencer has co-authored a dozen anthologies and created mindfulness-oriented coloring books reflecting her holistic coaching philosophy. She intertwines personal well-being with business success, leading her clients toward a balanced lifestyle where personal and professional spheres thrive. I love this. They don't just survive, but they thrive.
Why?
Right? Dr. Spencer holds a Bachelor in Marketing Management, an MBA in Marketing, and a PhD in Business Management. A committed lifelong learner, she deeply values quality time with loved ones. Through strategic planning, mindfulness, and time management, she enables her clients to be present, savor significant moments, and become more effective leaders. Dr. Lamarr Renee Spencer, welcome to Powerless to Powerful. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so very much for having me on. So far, I feel like we've been knowing each other forever, and you're someone that definitely want to continue to connect with. I love your spirit. You just seem like such a warm person. So thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would love to continue the friendship, by the way. Let's go. So, wow, your bio. I had the biggest smile on my face reading this earlier today, and I was just so honored to be here. And I'm just curious as to how you got here. I mean, when you were a little girl, did you go, I'm going to have my doctorate in business? Like, what was life like for you? How did you get here?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think our lives are already written for us. I think God, higher power, already has it written. We have one direction, one plan, and He says, no, 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 here's something else. And so, believe it or not, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a bus driver, like a school bus driver, right? And so I said, I'm going to drive the kids to school every morning. And back then, my parents said, nope, you're going to college. If you drive the bus, that's fine, but I want you to have a degree. So go figure. And so fast forward, I actually started working in the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, wow.
And so that's where I was when I first started college. I worked in manufacturing in the pharmaceutical industry. And so there, of course, continuing my career in that path, I decided, you know what? I don't know. Maybe I will continue to go to school, but I'm not quite sure because I was already planning there. But I was one of the youngest in my department, but people always asked me my advice on things. And so I think they call it like an old soul here because I was always around like my grandparents, their friends and family. I was an only child. So I was kind of like the tag along. And so there I decided, okay, you know what, maybe I can start doing this, coaching or helping people. It wasn't considered coaching at the time. I didn't call that helping people full time. Well, at that point, I was married. I had a small child. I was back in school. So I decided, you know what, this is something that I really enjoy doing because I wanted to help other people, especially people that were going through something. Because no matter what we go through in life, there's always speed bumps, there's roadblocks, there's so many different things to help you get to where you are. So who you see today is not the person that I was 10 or 15 years ago. I felt like I was on unsettled waters, if you will, because I had no idea. And so, like I said, sometimes you have one plan in mind. I'm like, okay, I'm going for marketing. And then here I am today helping other people. So, like I said, God always has a plan, and it may not be something that you even think about. It could just be that He puts people in position so that you can see different things and to change the trajectory of your life. And that's what's happening to me. I just happened to meet someone on a podcast, and she said, "Hey, I'd like to be on your podcast." I didn't know what a podcast was. I'm like, podcast. And so it changed at that point. And then what I found, which was more interesting, is that when you bring people together and they have when they're like-minded, it's powerful. So to your point, I appreciate the prayer and I appreciate you saying this, because let me tell you, I remember as a kid, I stayed in church. I mean, I stayed in, I was in Sunday school, and the time would change. So I was in prayer before Sunday school. We went to Bible study. We went to church on Sundays. The minister would come over to our house and pray. So we stayed prayer. And if you ask my mother today, she said, look, it's just God. And she always tells me, I said, and if I call and say, well, Mom, what do you think about this? She'll tell me, she said, just pray about it. So I'm really in tune to these things. And I appreciate that, because I can't even really, that's my synopsis of how I got here. But it was just there, and just that's all it was. I can't even explain it, because for me to say, okay, it was a straight line to get here, it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
No, it never is. It never is. And the beauty of that is, like, you've just had all of these stepping stones that just align. And it's not until we get to a certain place that we can look back and go, now I see how that person fit in, and that moment and that course and that stepping stone and all those puzzle pieces fit together. Because when we're in it, it's like if you're inside a jar, you can't read the label from the inside of the jar, right? It's not until you get out of the jar, not that we fit in jars, but it's just an analogy. It's not until you're out of the jar that you can read what's really going on. And it's not until we're out of those seasons and that bit further down the road that we can look back and go, I can see how all those puzzle pieces fit together. I love that you just said that you stayed in church. This morning, actually, I was reading Psalm 27. Here's one thing I crave from Yahweh. This is the Passion Translation. I want to live with him every moment in his house, beholding the marvelous beauty of Yahweh, filled with awe, delighting in his glory and grace. I want to contemplate in his temple. And I think another version says, I want to may I always dwell in the house of the Lord, something like that. Wow, it's so beautiful, because there's nothing like that sacred place, right?
Right. Absolutely. And again, there's things that happen in your life that you just can't even explain. The only thing you get to say is it must be God, because you can't always explain it. And it's not like you thought about it, right? There's no explanation behind it. That's just what it is, And I mean, that's the only way I can explain it. I'm like, nope, it just was meant to be. And you're right. I think we go through these different things to bring us to where we are, because in order for us to get to where we are, we have to have a testimony.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's my testimony. And I think that we need those things. It makes us a good person. It makes us strong, and it makes us to the point where we can champion and help other people.
Yeah. And I love that you were the one that people always came to with questions, and you had this information, you had this wisdom beyond your years at an earlier age as well. It's like, what a blessing, what a gift.
Yeah, well, before we would go to bed at night, when I say we, so like all the kids usually would come over to my grandmother's house, right? That was like our like hangout. And so before we would get into bed, we would have to get on our knees and pray. We would have to say the Lord's Prayer every single night. And it was clockwork. 9 o'clock, we had to say the Lord's Prayer. There was no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You could be sick, you would be in bed saying the Lord's Prayer. That's it. And that's the way I was raised. So I mean, I don't know any other way. On Sundays, I have to say now, with so many churches are virtual, I love it because I can attend about 4 or 5 churches in a day, and I love it.
Or from the comfort of your own home.
Yes. And I get something from each one of them, and I can go back and rewind. I love it, and I get so much out of it. Now I know my mother; she gets on me. She says, "Yeah, but you need to be amongst people," and I'm like, "I am. We're just virtual,
Yeah.
right?" But I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, COVID was good for a lot of things. That's one of them. Got a lot of churches online. It's great. It gives us access all over the globe. My mentor goes to an incredible church in America, and every now and then she'll send, and she's in America. Obviously, I just said that. And she will sometimes send me clips from her church. And so we get blessed from all around the world. It's amazing.
Right.
From all of your life experience, you're part of 9 anthologies, and the last one that you're involved in, The Depths and Diversity of Relationships, you are the visionary for. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I would really love to talk about this book because, as we discussed prior to going live, there are a lot of women, a lot of strong, phenomenal, integrous, godly women who are my age. I'm 47, and
We're
my
together.
age. Pardon?
I said we're right there together. I'm 46. We're right there together.
Wow, wow, wow. And there are a lot of women in their 40s and up who are single. And you've got this book on relationships, and I know it's not specifically about husband-wife relationships, but it is about a lot of other different relationships. Could you just give us a rundown on that?
Sure. So the book is not about necessarily intimate relationships, but there are a couple of chapters in there about how a husband and wife were. There's one about a husband and wife in the military and how they get past PTSD, and then there's another one in there who her husband and her son were all in the military, and all 3 of them had PTSD, and how they're getting through through the PTSD. So we have that. But I talk about, which I start off is Dad, I'm broken. And the reason why I said that is because initially um, that was not a chapter. Those were just my thoughts being written down. And that was just something that was personal to me. I was not planning on sharing that with anyone, let alone the world. And so I talked about that because I want fathers to know that they are the first relationships that their daughters have. And when I say that, I mean that you are the foundation of how men should treat your daughter and what her expectations are. And so, because of that, I felt it was important to actually put it in the book. But then we have someone comes behind me and she talks about how relationships are seasonal. Not all relationships are going to withstand the test of time. Some are put into place as a lesson for you or for them. but you're going to get something out of it. And that's what she calls seasonal. And she talks about relationships when she says seasons as it's like winter, spring, summer, fall. But she even has like this jot list of saying, okay, is this person in your life and what did they teach you? Because I don't think, especially we're talking about God, that no one is in your life by mistake.
Mm.
There's something in that relationship that's going to teach you something. And it's going to help you to grow. And so that's why that chapter is so powerful. And I wanted to come right after mine. But then as we go through, there's someone else who talks about how the people in her community were like extended families, and how although all of them were different, they all had the same aspirations. Like, for instance, New York, she talked about growing up in New York. And so we know New York, you can go to many different countries in one day in New York. And she talks about that. And those relationships are ones that you wouldn't necessarily think that would, that would be close, but they were. Everyone's, fighting for the same thing, not fighting physically, but, going after the same thing. Everyone wants the, like the American dream, if you will. And so
Yeah.
she talked about that. And we had someone discuss growing up in foster care. And she mentioned that not all foster care situations are bad. She took, which I thought was brilliant, each name of her foster mothers, and she looked up what the meanings were, and she talked about that. And I thought it was brilliant. And because she never had a relationship with her mother, she had 4 or 5 mothers. And so once she reached a certain age, of course, she out of the foster system. Now she and her mother came together and they had a relationship. And like she said, it was almost like it was a parent relationship, but it was more friendship. And she talked about sometimes you have to go through things. But I just
Mm.
thought that it was amazing how she looked at all those women and the meaning of their names and how she made it parallel to her life. I thought
Mm.
that was amazing. And so those are some of the, some of the relationships that's in the book. Because when we think about it, there's something in each one of those chapters, or at least one of those chapters, that resonate with someone. Either you've been in foster care or you've had problems with, maybe not, but your father or mother, or you've been in foster care. There's so many different elements to the book that I thought was phenomenal. And then of course we end with the last goodbye. And so that author, I mean, it made me cry. I couldn't even read the whole thing because she had such a close relationship with her mother. Her mother did everything for she and her siblings. And so the tables turned because her mother became ill. And like her mother
Mm.
said, she said, I've done my job because you're burying me. I'm not burying you. So we're in the right order. But now I'm passing the baton to you. So I need you to take what I've taught you, and you got to help me and to propel this family. And I just thought that that was powerful. I did, and I said, wow. And when she talked about, she's actually, her name is Karen Sim, she's actually the editor. And she said, you know what, I think we need to end with this. And I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. We're going to end with that. And it was the book is just magnificent. So thank you for even pointing those things out to me, because I didn't realize that how helpful that book was. And I mean, think about most people, when we wrote the book, we didn't know that it was going to be um, a testimony for other people and they could relate to it. It was more like self help for each one of us.
Wow.
And I didn't want to even, like I said, I didn't even want to put it out because I felt like growing up, whatever went on in our house stayed in our house. I didn't want it to be like an embarrassment.
Mm.
But what I realized is people used it as like it was help, and it was something that people could say, you know what, me too, I've gone through the same thing,
Yeah.
so that's what it was about. But I'm just so proud of it.
I'm going to invest in that book because it's really speaking to me. And, our willingness to be vulnerable and share our experiences gives permission for other people to share theirs. And it also makes us realize we're not on our own when we go through these things. There was so much in what you just said. The last goodbye, both times you mentioned it before this recording started and now, I'm just covered in goosebumps or Holy Ghost bumps, I reckon.
Yes. Yes.
But passing the baton, it's so important, especially this day and age, because we have a generation rising up who are so confused about their identity. And the thing is, these are our next generation of politicians, teachers, parents, pastors, all of our leaders. This is our next generation. And what happens in our home is so important. And we have a responsibility. And I'm part of a 12-month prophetic course, and my beautiful teacher, Roma Waterman, who's an Australian prophetic worship leader, I've been listening to her music for over 2 decades. I heard her on a podcast with the amazing Darlene Check, these two women are just generals of Christian worship and prophetesses. They were talking about pretty much this exact same thing in a segment of this interview. And she said, we're not raising boys and girls or sons and daughters. We're raising mothers and fathers. And I thought, wow, it took a moment for that to sink in. But I'm like, yeah, I have my twins. They're my youngest. They're 20 years old and my eldest is 29. I'm raising or have raised mothers and fathers, not boys and girls, and there are seasons for that, but ultimately what we're investing into our children and passing the baton on to are the next generation of mothers and fathers. And we have a responsibility to be doing this and be doing this well.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that the last goodbye, it's a big deal. We buried my mum about 9 or 10 years ago now, and it's a really big deal when that paradigm shifts of mum's no longer looking after us, we're looking after her.
Yes. Yes.
There's
Yes.
so much in that.
Yes. My mother just said to me the other day, she's like, you know what? I learned so much from you. And I'm like, really? Are you serious? She's like, yeah. She said, you're almost like a kid twice, right? And she said, I learned so much from you. And I'm sure when I reach a certain age, well, put it this way, I'm not even going to say when I reach a certain age, because I learned so much even from my daughter now, because things change, they evolve, especially technology. A lot of this stuff is new to us. We don't know.
Yeah.
We have no clue.
We don't have a clue of what they're going through. And they're going through a lot of stuff very different to what we went through. But yeah. I love what you said about the seasonal relationships, because we choose how we come out of a relationship, whether it's a lifetime, a season, or a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And we choose the learnings from that relationship, and we choose whether we come out as a victim or a victor.
Mm-hmm.
And what we take out of that relationship, I don't know, the depths of your story, but for myself, I've come out of domestic violence, and one that nearly cost me my life, and others that were mentally and emotionally abusive. Yet I choose what I do with that stuff. I choose, do I sit in victimhood, or do I go, wow, thank you. Number one, thanks God for allowing me to step out of that with my life intact. And thank you for the learnings that presented me, because now I get to, it's such a growth period, and I get to now be able to reach out to people who are in those similar situations. Do you have anything to add on to that?
Yes, well, my mother was in a domestic violence situation, right? And she's one of the strongest people I know. And like she told me several times, she said, when you have gone through things, you will never be the same. It's almost like that old person like dies, you will be different. And she, to me, is the victor. She never said, why me? It was never like that. It was always okay. Like, we need to get through it. And because of that, to me, she put both of us in survival mode. And
Yeah.
sometimes I know, even when I speak to my daughter, I'm like, wait a minute, I have to take a step back, because I don't think these kids, this generation, has that thick skin that we had to have. It's almost like we had to grow up very quickly. And even if you were in a domestic violence situation, I'm sure you had to not grow up, but you had to make changes, and you had to be very strategic, because it wasn't just you, it was now you and your children. So you, no matter what, were going to come out as the victor, no matter what, right? Because think about it, as women, we don't always have choices.
Yeah.
We have to. And sometimes the only thing, like for me, I know I've had to just say, look, God, you're going to have to just guide me, because I don't know. And I've even had to tell my daughter, like, look, I'm going to make mistakes. We're going to do it, but we're going to just do it together. And it's us in this situation now. I don't profess to know everything, but we just have to get through it. And you don't always necessarily have all the pieces together. You just may have a plan A and B, but you may not always have a C and D. But then after a while, it's like, wait a minute, everything starts falling into place. You don't always have it. And then I know sometimes people will say, well, why did you stay? And why did you do this? Well, because guess what? Until you're in that situation, you can't question it, because nobody wants to be in that situation. But again, we can't always just jump and just say, okay, let me just make this decision. Because when you turn around, you have these little ones looking at you. And even as women, it's almost like you hear that toxic masculinity where men cannot cry. Well, guess what? Women go through the same thing too. We can't always cry, because we don't always want our children to see us being so vulnerable.
Mm.
Our children look at us as being like the leaders, the strong ones, but sometimes we're not. There's a song that talks about going outside in the rain and crying so no one could see her tears. And it's the truth. How many people, I'm sure that's watching this, have cried in the rain or cried in the shower or at night, because you just don't have a clue, and you're like, God, please just make me, just guide me, or typical what we say, order my steps.
Mm.
We do. We do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like for me, it's not always physical abuse. Sometimes mental abuse is just as bad, if not worse, because it leaves a everlasting scar.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not to diminish the physical abuse, but I fully understand what you're saying there. It takes a lot to work through. Something I learnt was really being accountable for the choices I was making and becoming aware of the toxicity in me that was attracting that type of person. It's not how can I fix the toxicity in you? It's wait, what's going on in me? Where are my boundaries falling short? Where am I not knowing my identity enough to be able to stand up for myself and my children and say, hey, I'm not going to accept that anymore. And it does take time. And it's so easy for outsiders to go, I can't believe you're staying. Why would you stay? And you're spot on. And the another issue with that type of abusive relationship is that a lot of the time the woman has been so chipped away at for so long, and so she doesn't necessarily have the confidence and the knowing that she can make it without him, because
Yeah,
there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot
yeah,
that goes into that. I think the most important thing is being a support for someone in that situation rather than a judge.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Well, my parents had a taxi business, and they would have like, it was like a safe haven, like a safe house. So the safe house would call them to pick up women in different locations and take them to these safe houses. And they could not give the address. The telephone number would not show up on their cell phone. It's just that when they would call, they would know exactly where that woman was and where to take them for safety. So yeah, so it could be someone in. When I say my parents, like both my parents have remarried, so it was my mother and my stepfather who had this taxi business. So they did not know initially. They didn't sign up for it, or they didn't know initially that that's what it was. But once they started finding out, it's like, okay, well, this is the safe haven, and they could not go because my parents were in like a small town, so they couldn't even go the same direction every time. But we don't always realize, and to your point, how God puts us in the life, like we are someone's guardian angel, and we may not even realize the responsibility that we have. Sometimes that responsibility could be so great that that could be the difference of someone living or not.
Oof.
Yes, they would be like the person's like it was like a taxi, but they would pick up, sometimes the mother and children. And that was very disheartening. And let me tell you, they wouldn't even tell me, like my stepsister, they wouldn't even tell us. Like we didn't know. Because again, sometimes people will say things unknowingly, you're telling, because you could just be in conversation. So they didn't even tell us. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, those safe havens, and I'll ask anyone in your areas, find out, because there's people out there who really want to help. Or like in my neighborhood, I didn't know this. So when people have candles in their windows, those are considered safe houses. I didn't know that because I always had candles in my window even after Christmas, because I'm like, oh, I like them. But the significance is that these people have these safe houses.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't even know about it until afterwards. When I had the candles and someone actually had to educate me on it, I didn't even know. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. So I still have my candles up, and I'm like, okay, I could be like a safe house. That's fine with me. I love it.
Oh, wow. That's so beautiful.
Hmm.
That is so beautiful. I love that so much. It's so important to me that women find a safe space, and I'm so protective of my home because it's the one place on the earth that we get to have as our sanctuary, our safe place. And there's so many who don't have it inside their own homes. And
Yeah,
so knowing that, that's beautiful. And
yeah.
this actually reminds me of something that we were talking about prior to the recording, because we were talking about women having female friends and
Hmm.
how important that is to be able to have that community. And something that just popped into my mind, I'm part of a group called Sequoia Strong, and sequoia trees are trees that are so tall, and you'll find them in forests, but their roots are about 6 to 12 feet deep. So it's not very deep not deep, but long, and they go beneath the surface, but their roots grow sideways. So if they're standing alone and a breeze comes, they're so tall, they won't be able to withstand that breeze. But because they generally grow in a forest, their roots grow along like this. And so all of their roots are intertwined and connected, and they keep each other withstanding everything that comes their way. And I think it's so important that we have women in our circle who are that safe place, who are that sanctuary, who are that community. It's like that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I fully agree with it.
Hmm.
um, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it takes a village just to exist. We all have to coexist, right? It does take a village, because I did a piece not too long ago about the importance of having great neighbors and good quality neighbors. And nowadays no one wants to get involved. But if you see something that's going on that may not be quite right, get involved, because you could be saving that person's life. And why not, right? Why not try to do the right thing? And I think that's so important. And I know, luckily, I've been so blessed that even my neighborhood, that mostly everyone knows each other. Actually, all of us know each other. And when someone new comes on, we introduce ourselves, because you don't know. We have it, it could be women, children, men, whomever, but we all need to kind of coexist, because we're really, even though we're in different homes, we're really like extended families. And I think it should be that way, because it was like that before, years ago, right? It does take a village.
It does. It does. Ah, Dr. Lamarr, it's been a real honor talking with you. I'm just wondering if there's something like, do you have a life motto? Is there something that you would like to leave our listeners with? And also how they can connect with you? But yeah, anything like that?
I have so many, but the one thing that always, um, the one thing I always say is, I want someone to show up for me, so I'm going to show up for you. Right? Because so often we do good, but no one wants to show up for us, and that's kind of like hurtful. So show up for your fellow sister or whomever. Show up for them, because sometimes it could be so impactful, and you just don't know what people are going through. So always just try to do good, and trust me, good will come back to you. Now that's no, like, whole educated thing, but it is. And I tell people, I'm like, look, and I know people have seen it before, but it's not when you're born, it's not when you pass, it's that dash. What do you want to be known for? What do you want your legacy to be? That's so important. What is your dash? Who are you? And so, and now I have to say that most people that will support you are ones that you maybe have never even met. Because now with social media, you can connect with thousands of people that you've never physically met, and they will support you.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. Just keep an open mind, because most of us have not, this is all new for us, right? Like for me, all this is new. And I had an open mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm meeting so many phenomenal people. So now I feel like I have thousands of friends. Yes, absolutely. But I can be found on the socials. Dr. Lamarr Spencer, LaMarr Spencer. And I guarantee you there's probably not a lot of Lamarr Spencers out there. So please, follow me, or, reach out to me. I'm like everywhere, and I have bad sleeping habits. Like I have insomnia, so I always respond. But yes, and I will continue to follow everyone, and follow you too, Dr. Angela. Thank you so very much for having me on. It's been a delight. And can I just say one more thing that we didn't talk about, but I like to just point it out. So,
Please.
anyone's interested, I am actually going to be a visionary on an anthology called The Deck of Diversity. And it's due to come out in September, Octoberish, or November. And it kind of aligns with what we were talking about today, because I want authors, and it's still new. So if anyone's interested, reach out to me. The anthology is about being a champion of hope, being a champion of diversity. We've all have gone through some type of adversity, but we have actually overcame it, and we're helping other people. So I want, if anyone's interested, to please reach out to me. It's called The Deck of Diversity, and I want people from different backgrounds. Now, I know when we hear anthology, we think, oh, I got to be an author. You don't have to be an author, but you just have to put the pen to the paper, however way you want to do it, and just write, because there's someone else out there who's going to hear your story, see your story, and I want people to be a beacon of hope and change.
So good. So good. And thank you for sharing that opportunity. That's amazing. And I pray that people take you up on that. And you're also a coach. Before we bring this to a close, you also offer coaching. Do you want to give a quick rundown on that? and then we can wrap
Sure.
up.
Yes, absolutely. So right now, I'm offering 33 minutes because I always believe in the try before you buy and try it out. So I have a 6-month program and we talk about different things. The first time we talk is 90 minutes and I call it the VIP intense session. Intense because we talk about what is actually the problem, what is going on. And it's not like you feel like you're being interrogated, but I want to get to know you, you get to know me and see if we can work together. And then after that, it's 45 minutes twice a month. And then in between that, you have access to me either telephone or cell phone, text, email, however way. And that's 24 hours because, again, I'm always up at night. So please reach out to me. In my area, I always say it's really about people being burned out, but I talk about workplace bullying, I talk about relationships. And I always think to be a good coach, you have to have gone through these things. So trust me, I can relate to so many different things. But yes, reach out to me there. And also, again, I have my free gift, which is 30 minutes. I have checklists because I always want people to walk out with more than walk out with more than what they came in with. I want people to be full, if you will. So, yes, that's where I am. I'm on all the socials.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Lamarr, for that opportunity. So reach out to Dr. Lamarr if you would like to take advantage of her incredible offer and coaching. I mean, you can see the brilliant woman that sits before you. And I just ask that you share this podcast with anyone who you feel might need it, who might benefit from it. So thank you to everyone for being here with us today. It's been an absolute honor, Dr. Lamarr. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. The honor is mine.
Thank you. Follow Angela on Facebook and LinkedIn at Angela Bennett, on Instagram at angieb_transformations, or visit angieb.com.au. And remember, your past does not define you, it refines you.